When the Nobel Committee awarded this year's Peace Prize to the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, its staff were on the ground in Syria overseeing the destruction and removal of its chemical weapons. I'm here in Oslo for a special edition of Hard Talk with the Director General of the OPCW, Ahmet Azumcu, who's here to collect the prize. Does the work of his organisation in Syria mean peace is any more likely there? Ahmet Azumcu, welcome to Hard Talk. Now, it is 20 years to the day since Nelson Mandela came here to collect his Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think that it still means as much today as it did then?
I think it does. Nelson Mandela was always a source of inspiration to our generations. He was very dedicated to peace, reconciliation, and he did it. And he was also a source of inspiration to our organization. He was like a moral guide. And I think in our limited area, in fact, we followed his path in order to contribute to global peace and security of the people.
Okay, now the award was given to the entirety of the OPCW's work, but the timing was such that there you were in Syria. So let's consider the progress that has been made in Syria. And you have a significant deadline coming up. I mean, the ultimate deadline is that all chemical weapons have been dealt with by the middle of next year. But you will have a more immediate one, which is that the most dangerous chemical weapons should be out of the country by the end of the year. Can you meet that deadline?
Actually, I'm pretty confident that we can meet the deadline of June 2014 to destroy all chemical weapons which are existing in Syria. As to the target dates or timelines that we have established for the removal of chemical weapons outside of the country, there might be some slight delays because of technical problems that we encountered in the country, because of the provision of certain equipment material which were delayed, and also because of the security situation in the country. So the transportation of all those chemical materials to Latakia, to the port, for loading on the ship may not happen before the 31st of December. There might be a slight delay, but I'm not that worried about it.
Okay, well, talk us through. The situation at the moment is what? That there are chemical weapons in, what, 7 different sites across Syria?
Yes, indeed. They are now located in different sites, and to some of the sites, the accession roads, in fact, are quite risky at the moment. Of course, the security and safety of our inspectors is an overriding concern, and the transportation will have to be executed in a safe environment. There will be some verification activities. There will be sampling and analysis. Therefore, all this has to be done in a smooth manner, and this may take a little longer time than we have foreseen.
Okay, but you have managed to get them from, I think, more than 20 different sites across the country. You've got them down to about 7, and then the aim is to get those within a matter of weeks via road, via what, more than 100 miles of road in a war zone, which seems scarcely credible.
Actually, now the Syrian experts, in fact, are being trained for overpacking and for a safe transportation of all those materials, and they are being delivered the necessary equipment. And most of the job will be done by the Syrian authorities themselves. And both the United Nations as well as OPCW staff will monitor this operation. This is quite challenging. This is going to happen for the first time in a war zone. And, but we think that it's feasible. And as I said earlier, it may take a little longer time than we have foreseen. But we are confident that it's going to happen.
Does the Syrian regime control all the roads to the port of Latakia?
It depends. Actually, until recently, the Damascus-Homs road was closed for some time. We have learned today that it was reopened. It was actually it's being controlled again by the government forces, but it may the situation may change. Therefore, we have to find the right moment to transport for the transportation of those materials, and we hope that the opposition also will be cooperative and will be supportive of this operation.
Okay, because at the moment you're what? Finding that the Syrian regime, that President Assad himself is being extremely cooperative?
They are cooperative, they are fulfilling their obligations deriving from the convention. They are a state party, and they have obligations deriving also from the decisions made by the Executive Council of our organization, as well as the UN Security Council. So all I can say that they have been cooperative.
Okay, and the opposition?
The opposition didn't pose any problem so far. I assume we don't have direct contacts with the opposition as the organization. I assume that they are supportive.
But have you negotiated transfer of materials via roads that are in rebel-held areas?
This is the United Nations, which has some contacts, continuous contacts with the opposition, and they were invited, in fact, to support this operation, which we believe is in the interest of the whole Syrian people, because after all, we are going to eliminate.
I'm asking if actually on the ground you have done deals so that you can move material, because just trying to imagine this situation where you have got hundreds of tons of lethal material that you are transferring by road with your staff monitoring it alongside it.
Actually, the plan is not that our staff will escort those materials. Well, what they will do, they will verify the loading of those stuff and unloading of the stuff at the port, and again loading on the ship. So they will not go along with the convoy.
But how do you feel about this? You talk about just the road between Damascus and Homs, let alone beyond from Homs to Latakia. This idea of lorry loads of mustard gas being taken?
Look, these materials, in fact, have been moved on several occasions before by the Syrian government forces, so it's not going to happen for the first time. If it was feasible in the past, it should be feasible now too.
Okay, but no plan B. You've got to make sure those roads are safe.
This is a Syrian responsibility to move everything to the Latakian port. Yeah.
Okay, and then when it gets to Latakia, what's the plan then? Because I know you have lined up the Norwegian and the Danes to have ships ready purely because there's no way an American ship can sail into a Syrian port.
That's correct. One of those ships, Danish or Norwegian ship, will take over those priority one chemical materials, as we call them now, and they will sail to a port to be identified, which is not yet identified, and they will unload this or transload to the American ship. And this may take some days. We expect that everything could be done in terms of transloading, of course, by the end of January, a little earlier than end of January.
Okay, so in the next few weeks, this material, 500 tons of mustard gas and the like, is going to Latakia, being put on a Danish or Norwegian ship, and being taken where?
We don't know yet. There are some contacts which are underway. I expect that one of the states parties, in fact, will accept to provide this facility of transloading. This is also an important in-kind contribution to this major undertaking by the organization, by the international community.
Presumably you're talking about a country that is on the Mediterranean and can provide a port.
I assume so, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so countries in the area like Italy or Greece?
I don't know yet.
Okay, so and you can't, or you hope, I imagine you have negotiations, but you're not able to say.
I'm pretty sure that one of those countries, states parties in the region will step forward for this.
Okay, and so the Danish Norwegian ships go in there, into one of these ports, and then the material is transferred to an American ship?
That's correct.
And it deals with this material and neutralizes it in port?
Not necessarily, because the facilities for hydrolysis or neutralization are being now installed on this ship, and there will be 2 facilities, and all this material will be loaded on the ship, and they will be neutralized on the ship, and there will be a reaction mass as a result of this neutralization. And the reaction mass, or effluent as we call it, will be 10 times more than the substance which is going to be neutralized. And everything will be stored on the ship. And after all this operation is over, the effluent also will be incinerated somewhere in a commercial plant disposal facility.
Okay, but I notice you're saying it's on the ship. So is the expectation that it will be done at sea?
It may be done so, yes. All preparations, in fact, are being done for either option, either at a port or at sea.
For the actual neutralizing of the material?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the transfer? Could it be that you also have to transfer at sea from the Danish and Norwegian ships?
Actually, it could be done, but I mean, experts would prefer to do it at a port. It's easier.
Has it ever been done before?
No, it wasn't done before. It wasn't destroyed at sea. Clearly, these facilities are tested and they function quite well. And the safety record is quite high, but it is going to be done for the first time at sea.
Okay, you say the safety record is quite high, which isn't very reassuring. I mean, this whole operation sounds incredibly risky. Is it such? Is it risky? You just don't have a choice?
No, actually, we don't see any risk. And we have received several briefings from the experts who have worked on this project. And we were assured, in fact, that all safety measures will be in place. And we have gone through the technicalities, and I found them very convincing.
I can't help wondering, though, how you're going to feel when it's going to, how all of us should be feeling while it's ongoing.
I think you should be very comfortable. Our inspectors also will be on the ship, and they will verify, in fact, every activity of destruction as they are doing at other destruction facilities. And before we get into that phase, as the organization, we have to verify whether the facility is up to the job. And we will have, in fact, an inspection. And then after this inspection, an agreement will be signed with the United States. Okay. And we expect that everything will be.
But 500 tons of mustard gas will be neutralized while a ship is sailing around the Mediterranean?
Actually, less than 500 tons of mustard gas. Mustard gas is part of it. There are other substances, precursors and other substances which are going to be destroyed. But this is not really a safety risk or a security risk from our point of view.
So people should be quite relaxed about that?
Absolutely.
The head of your field operations in Syria, Jerry Smith, was reported as saying when the organisation won the prize, "We'll celebrate the Nobel Peace Prize when our mission in Syria is successfully completed." When will you judge that to be so?
Actually, we have a mandate until June, end of June next year. As to our presence as the OPCW and joint mission with the United Nations in Damascus, this may be a little shorter depending on the evolution of events. So we will continue to have a presence for the coming months.
Okay, but I wonder, however much you destroy, will you ever be able to say that Syria is free of chemical weapons?
According to our estimates and estimates of state parties, Syria has disclosed, in fact, its chemical weapons. If there are question marks about some facilities or chemical weapons which may not have been declared, then the state parties have the right, in fact, to invoke a mechanism according to the Executive Council decision as well as the UN Security Council resolution. And our inspectors, in fact, would go and verify those facilities or those sites.
Okay, but how confident are you that what the Syrian government has said that it has is accurate, that there aren't more, that perhaps, whether it's the government putting some away or even the opposition, which has taken some, the rebel groups, some of the perhaps the more extreme ones who have been accused of using them?
Actually, we have seen no evidence about possession of chemical weapons by the opposition.
No evidence at all?
No. There were some speculations, but we have seen no evidence at all. And as to the Syrian government, we think that they have been transparent, and we have raised some questions with them, and they replied quite constructively. But if there are still some questions, every state party, in fact, has the right to raise those questions, and we'll follow them up.
So if there's no evidence at all that the opposition groups have used chemical weapons, Was the Syrian government responsible for the attack in the suburbs of Damascus in August?
I didn't say that they haven't used or they did use. I said that we didn't have any evidence of their possession of chemical weapons. And as the investigation mission, in fact, determined, there was a large-scale use of sarin gas in Ghouta in the outskirts of Damascus. But they didn't get to that far to apportion the blame on anyone.
Human Rights Watch reported that yes, they said unequivocally it was sarin, but that also those inspectors found sufficient evidence to allow the trajectory of the missiles to be determined, and in doing so were able to establish that it had been fired from a large military base that was home to the Republican Guard's 104th Brigade. Are they wrong in saying that?
I would say that they are wrong. This is an investigation led, in fact, by Dr. Sestrom, who was appointed by the UN Secretary General. We consider that this is purely a UN mission that was supported by the OPCW because Syria at that time was not a state party, and this was the only mechanism which could be invoked. Therefore, I'm not really in a position to discuss the details of this report.
But why not? Because I think 9 of the 12 team were OPCW staff. It was your staff members who were involved in that investigation. Are you not saying anything purely now because Syria is a member state?
Not at all. Since the beginning, in fact, this process is considered as purely a UN process because all the information, including the report itself, is considered a UN property.
Okay. But you know, don't you? I mean, you might say, look, I know, I'm just not prepared to say.
The inspectors also are reporting to the UN Secretary General, not to me.
Have you not seen their report?
No, not before it was concluded.
But it has been concluded.
Oh, yes, I have seen the report, as you did, and as others did. I read it. And there will be a final report, in fact, in a week time or 10 days to be submitted to the Secretary General.
Which will apportion blame?
I don't know. I don't think so. Because the mandate, in fact, was to investigate whether the chemical weapons were used or not. So, and it was found that they were used.
But one of the difficulties you will know that people have here is that here you are not wanting to apportion blame, not wanting to point the finger, perhaps at the regime. And you will know that opposition groups in Damascus and elsewhere say that the effect of the deal that was done as a result of the Russian brokered deal that avoided US intervening militarily was that your team went in and Assad was given the green light by the international community. The message is that he can kill his people with conventional means, just not with chemical weapons. And that was the suggestion of opposition groups in Damascus as a result of your team arriving in Syria.
Actually, it would be unfair, in fact, to blame the OPCW nor the UN, in fact, to be involved in such a deal. I don't think it's correct. I think what we have been doing, in fact, to fulfill the tasks entrusted to both OPCW and the UN by the international community, by a Security Council resolution or within the mandate of the UN Secretary General himself. And the decision has been made, in fact, by the Russian Federation and the United States in Geneva, as we all know, on 14th of September, in fact, to eliminate the chemical weapons in Syria. I don't think it's connected to one issue or another, nor a deal exists.
But do you accept that one of the consequences of it is that it could prolong the war in Syria?
Actually, my expectation is just the opposite. In fact, for the first time, after 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years, the international community, including the major powers, were able to agree on one area related to the Syrian conflict, the elimination of Syrian chemical weapons. And this area, it may be a little limited to some, but still it is a very important area. And I hope and I expect that the international community can build on this agreement and pave the way for a wider dialogue and negotiations in order to address the Syrian problem. And if we can keep this momentum, and if a Geneva II conference is held in January, then I hope that we can also use this process as a catalyst, in fact.
But what it has done, the effect it has done, is up until a certain point it looked like President Assad There was tremendous pressure on him, and suddenly he's off the hook. And you know that the opposition groups in Syria, much that they may want chemical weapons removed from the country, just see an entirely different balance of power within the country as a result of this deal.
Actually, I think my mandate is limited to elimination of chemical weapons. I don't think I'm rightly placed to comment on the wider Syrian problem. Of course, as a human being, I'm very saddened about the situation in Syria, and saddened by the tremendous number of losses of life. Human beings, innocent people, are being killed every day. Over 100,000 people have been killed over the past 2.5 years. Of course, I want that this conflict ends as soon as possible.
100,000, 5,000 people every month are being killed. Something like about 1,000 of those were killed by chemical weapons. The rest were by conventional. One can't help wondering what the difference is, whether guns and bombs are less barbaric than gas.
Actually, no one could argue with that. I mean, there is no monopoly of, the atrocities or, nefarious aspect of the weapons. All of them are.
So then why, to use the words of the Nobel citation, your work has defined the use of chemical weapons as a taboo under international law. But you would accept they're no worse than any other weapon?
Actually, I wouldn't say so. After massive use of chemical weapons in the First World War in 1915, and repeated uses of chemical weapons in different wars and conflicts, the international community decided that those weapons should be eliminated, not because, because of their effects on the human beings, because of the sufferings, because of the long-term effects that they decided that they should be, gotten rid of them. This doesn't mean that the other weapons should continue to be used, so not at all.
Well, what about those countries that haven't signed? Because there are actually remarkably few who haven't signed the agreement, or at least who haven't ratified it. Two who have signed are Myanmar, Burma and Israel. If you had the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, sitting here with you about to collect the Nobel Peace Prize, what would you say to him?
Actually, I served in Israel as an ambassador. I know a little their concerns, security concerns, and I was told that this prevented them, in fact, of joining the convention in the previous years. I believe that the situation has changed considerably now because of Syria joining the convention. And I would, in fact, call upon him to reconsider the Israeli position and to join the organization as soon as possible.
Can you see any reason why he wouldn't?
I don't know. Of course, every country is sovereign in its decision, and they may have some concerns that we don't know, and I will leave the decision to them.
We met a few months ago when you had first been awarded the prize, and one sensed a sort of surprise on all the part of the organisation, and yourself included, that you had been given the prize. I wondered almost if there was something that could happen that would make you feel satisfied and comfortable and a worthy recipient of the prize. Is there something that you would point to that say, when we've done this, then yes?
Actually, my surprise was not really linked to any lack of confidence or any sense of, I would say we didn't deserve it yet or not. This wasn't so. But what I was expecting, in fact, to make a little more progress, in fact, in the destruction. So we are now at the level of 82, which is very considerable. We must
82%.
Yes, we must recognize that enormous resources have been allocated to the destruction of chemical weapons, both in United States, in Russia, and elsewhere. And I thought that maybe we could be awarded when we arrive at 90%. So it came a little earlier, and which we were pleased very much.
Ahmed Azumcu, thank you very much for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you.